Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 4 of Voices of Food Future. From the beginning, we have had conversations when it came to the food systems that we have in our country and our continent. We started with talking about the cooperatives, we talked about the policies, we even had a conversation on how other sectors affect voices or food systems in Africa, including gender, including finances, including cooperatives. And now today in the studio, we are going to have a conversation that is going to focus on the money aspect of food systems. What about the finance and the investments that we make? What about the marketing? And we are also going to touch a bit on the policies as well. And in the studio today, we have two amazing guests. And at this point, I want to let them introduce themselves so that you can also know who we have. And then we can get on with the conversation. Welcome to episode 4 of Voices of Food Future.
Thank you, Caleb, for having me on the podcast. It's a pleasure to discuss this very critical topic. My name is Esther Nyekirinduta. I'm the co-founder of Blue Farms Investment Limited. A lot of people wonder why Blue. It stands for Better Land Use for the Ecosystem because we promote better usage of our land because we know it's limited where we come from. So if we don't take care of it, that will mean we will suffer in the long run. I also run a foundation called Tulivu Foundation. I'm the foundation manager. And in that space, we promote sports, we promote environment, conservation, and education. So thank you. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb. And thanks for having me on the podcast. My name is John Eric. I'm a technical project manager in aquaculture. I work with Lattice Aquaculture, a consulting firm that focuses on the aquaculture value chain in East Africa. I'm also a graduate from the African Food Fellowship Program, where we look at food systems across the continent and seeing how we can work together to put more food on our tables. I'm very excited today because it's about the youth, Africa, and agriculture. Very exciting topics. Yeah. I wonder how long you have.
How much time do we have?
Yeah.
I want to start with Esther, and I have a question on when it comes to young people and food systems in Africa. We don't normally get to see most young people engrossed in the ecosystem of whether it's land management or the food system as well as a whole. So as an entrepreneur, how does it feel to be a young person who is in these spaces, and are they open to young people? Like, are there young people coming in? Give us the overview from your point of view, because you're at a vantage point.
Thank you for that question, Caleb. And I think more youths should be involved in the agribusiness because we are the youngest demography in Kenya at the moment. And it's the backbone of our economy. And I think the reason I was fortunate enough to be in that space, by profession, I am a food scientist, food technology and scientist. I haven't practiced that in a while, so it escapes me. So I had the relevant information that I needed to go into the agribusiness space. I also had, luckily, a bit of access to my mother's land. So she was kind enough to let me use a section of her land, which a lot of youths don't have access to. And I also had access to market because I started with market research before I went into agribusiness. So I made sure that I covered my bases. So when more youths are coming into that space, my advocacy is always around be as informed as possible. Don't see your neighbor planting dragon fruits and you go and do the same. First, start with the end in mind. Start with your market in mind. If I grow something, who am I selling it to? How much money do I need? So do that math, and then now you can go into the ground, access the necessary resources that you need to start farming.
Right, thank you. John, when it comes to aquaculture, first of all, I know it's quite it's not a term that most people hear on a daily basis. So let's start with what is aquaculture?
No, that's very interesting. It's been a long time since I was once asked that. No, I would start from the known. Okay. So ordinarily what my grandfather did is sunset, we get to a boat with our nets, get into Lake Victoria, go catch fish in the morning. The wives or whoever is by the shore waiting for them to get the fish.
Yeah.
Now, with all the pressure on the natural resources, there's less fish in the lake and the other natural resources like rivers. So then we have to look for an alternative source of fish, because we all know fish is very, very important. So then we decide to farm fish. So in aquaculture, we farm fish. In fisheries, we catch the fish. So it's basically farming fish.
So you get the fish out of the lake into a place where you can manage it, sort of.
Well, yes and no. So we have various ways to farm the fish.
Yeah.
So you could do inland, that is just close to your house. You could have a pond with water in it. We have breeding facilities, the hatcheries, where they produce the fries or the fingerlings, the young fish, and sell to the farmers who will grow them to market size.
Okay.
We also have cage fish farming that's done on the lake. So you, instead of going to catch fish that's roaming in the lake, you have a cage inside the lake, and you put in the fingerlings and you feed them, and they grow. It's controlled, and you catch them at the end of the day. So before we had the hatcheries, what you just mentioned is what used to happen. You went to the natural resource, you looked for the young fish, and you put them in a controlled environment, fed them, they grew, you sold them or ate them. But now we have inland facilities where we produce the young ones and sell to outgrow farmers.
So I have a question, because we've had this conversation on cage fishing, especially in the previous episode. The lady who was here, she's called Susan. She told us they have these cooperatives they have, and they empower women mostly, and they finance them to have cages in the lake, and then they can do the fishing. And this is a question I'm going to ask to both of you, because you've been in this space for a while. When it comes to the financing that is available, not to big corporations, not to experienced farmers, because I really want us to focus on the young people. So if I'm a young person and I want to get into this space, be it starting my own organization on land usage, like you said, and you'll tell us a bit about that, or I want to do my own cage fishing, or I also want to start my own fish farm, how easy is it for me to get finances in our country? I think we can start with this. Tell us, and then you go to John.
So we first have to acknowledge that the funding landscape has changed. And I think when we first went in, our model was anchored on 17 women and youth. They had access to land, but they didn't have access to the finances. So what they would do, they would lease, you've inherited a piece of land, and then you don't have the money, so you lease it out to someone, an acre for 10,000 a year, and then you watch them flourish.
10,000 shillings?
Yes.
Okay.
10,000 shillings a year. And then you're watching them making between 100,000 to 300,000 per year. That's painful for you. So we approached them and we asked them whether they wanted to take back their land, ownership of their land, and we would look for financing. And luckily, we were able to get a grant from KCIC, Kenya Climate Innovation Center, which we used to buy farm inputs like fertilizer, digging hose, certified seeds, which we gave to the farmers, and that was the onset of Blue Farms. And then we started now training on the better land use, like instead of overusing pesticides, you can use homemade composite in manure to regenerate the soil. So the better land use comes in. So, and then once they were able to access a direct market, and mind you, at that point, we were also doing customer discovery, because at the end at Blue Farms, our customer is the farmer. So we asked them what their biggest need was. And funny enough, it wasn't financing. For them, they said their biggest problem was a market, a steady market to offtake their needs. And that is what I believe is the biggest problem at the moment. Because if we had a structured people, like way of taking the farmers' produce, then we'll never have to struggle with revenue generation, because you're guaranteed. So from the onset, when our farmers now, we gave them the seeds, of course they were at subsidized prices, and then we connect them, they were potato farmers, we connected them to an agro processor who was making potato chips, Lioness, yada yada. So they had money for their next input. And now because they are guaranteed of a market, there was continuity of revenue generation.
Had the access to it.
Yes. And the other thing is because they were now pulled into a sort of a cooperative model, it was easier for them to negotiate for better prices from the person buying for their produce.
Right, we're gonna actually get to the cooperative model because that's something else. I like your answer because it's brought up. We've had several issues that you've just mentioned come up in the previous episodes. We had people saying the problem is not food. There's a lot of food in our country. The problem is for the farmers access to the market. Sometimes there is a problem of how, like, a very clear set pathway from the farm all the way to the seller and to the consumer. When it comes to just before John gives us an overview of how his financing model is, when it comes to, you said the young people are the ones who had access to the land. Or there were people who
women and youth. Yes.
They had access to the land.
Yes. So where I come from, you'll find everybody still stays with their parents. So you're given a section of your father's land to farm.
Yeah.
Yes. So when we bring in a family, we'll ensure there's a youth, maybe a gentleman with his wife, and then their mother. Yes.
So in this piece of land, so these people who you're approaching are the owners of the land.
Yes.
They used to rent it out for 10,000 shillings.
Yes.
But the people they're renting out to make close to 100 to 300,000 shillings a year.
Exactly.
So to the person who's renting it out, it's a loss basically for land. So now you had to approach them and they sell the land to you.
Not sell.
Okay.
Contract farming.
They
They farm, we buy from them.
Oh, they are the ones who farm themselves.
Yes.
And then now you buy from them.
Exactly.
So you give them access to the market.
Yes.
And then you find a ways to finance the farming as well.
Yes.
All right, that's actually interesting. Thank you. How about you, John, when it comes to what you do? And because I remember you also said you do consulting. So when it comes to young people who want to get in your space, how do you do it? Is there a dedicated fund where you have money that you give people and then sort of like a loan format?
Well, I think we would start with how easy is it for a young person to get into the sector. As Esther said, the landscape is changing, just like almost everything else is changing. So most of the land that's required to do fish farming, as we've found out in our baseline studies, especially in the regions that aquaculture is relatively popular, the land is owned by the parents. So the ponds are also owned by the parents. The young people work on the land. Sometimes they're involved in the farming itself. But then the proportion of aquaculture farmers that are actually youth and they own the enterprises, it's less than 30%. It's very low. So for us, it had to start from how do we make this particular field, for lack of a better term, sexy for a young person. How do we make them attractive and engaged? So we realized one thing with the young people, if you map the agriculture value chain as a whole, is most young people tend not to be very interested in the primary bit of production. It's non-primary activities like agro-processing, where it's less labor intensive and it's a quick return of in investment. So then in production, we have to have incentives. So first is scaling them. This is actually you can do this and make money, and here are the skills that you can use to do it right, because aquaculture, just like most agricultural activities, if you don't do it right, as we say, you burn your fingers. So before we say how do we finance the young people, it's saying, are they equipped? Because then we'll be throwing the money. So first we started off with the skills. And then one thing that's unique with aquaculture is, I think it's most of agriculture, the inputs are very expensive. So we've told them to do it right, but for them to do it right, they have to get the very expensive inputs like the fish feeds and the fingerlings.
And fish feeds are actually quite pricey.
Exactly. And most of the high quality brands are imported. It's not made locally. So then it's seeing one model, like Esther said, is the contract farming, which in a broader sense is more of a value chain financing model. We're saying, could you get inputs on credit and then repay when you sell? But then that's a very small segment of the value chain. There's also the outgrower model, where you grow your crop, in this case fish, and there's guaranteed market. So you have to involve an off-taker in that case who's committed, and you have to control the production process because the off-taker wants specific quality in the product. So we have to work with that. One that's currently coming up is blended instruments, financial instruments, where it's donor public money together with private investment. So the youth who are engaged enough to have their own enterprises, they get part of the seed money. Do you have innovation? Are you doing something interesting enough? So within the space, we have grants, we have loans, and such instruments, and it's actually working quite
So you
well.
partner with other organizations and other corporations to bring together all this to create sort of like a pool of resources that these young people can have access to, albeit on credit.
Yeah, we work in consortia, so you have partners from various nodes of the value chain bringing in their expertise and
resources. So it's not just resources, it's also the expertise that they bring to the table. Yeah. So you guys have actually got into the second issue that I wanted us to talk about, which was the financing model, because you've talked about contract farming, and then he's talked about the blended sort of financing. So just before you go on, I have a question, and I want you to answer truthfully because you guys have been around this for a while. Is there money for young people in farming?
Money to give them, or money they get?
Is there money for them in terms of profits for young people in farming?
Is the venture profitable?
Yes.
I think, as he said, it's also dependent on which part of the value chain you're in. Yeah, because when I'll be very honest,
yes,
and we all know this, like the farmers at the very bottom, they are the most exploited, really.
True.
And the people at the middle are the ones who make the bigger chunk of the money. So I think as youths, when we go into these ventures, we also have to go at it with also integrity. You can't make like 200% profit while the person you're buying from barely recoup their investment. So there is money, but depending on which spectrum of the value chain you're in. And then again, we also have to encourage the youths to also go into processing. We have very small food processing plants in Kenya. And as a food technologist, was one of the reasons I went to study food science and technology, because my end goal was always to do a value addition thing. I grew up in a very productive area, and I could see how exploited my farming community was. So my goal was to always bring ownership of these production plants to the people who also produce what we are processing. So I think there is money. I won't lie. At the end of the day, it wouldn't have 30% of our economy if it didn't make any money.
We literally taught in school that agriculture is the backbone of our country's economy. So when we talk about the farmer who is, that means you can own a very large piece of land but not make very much off of it. Because I remember a conversation I was having, and there's this lady who told me, and we've had it on the podcast as well, you may be a farmer and I may come and buy, I may decide that, you know what, I'm not going to the market. I'm actually going to the farmer direct to get the produce from there. But even after I bypass the market, when I get to the farm itself, there's someone there who is speaking on behalf of the farmer. And I can't have access to the farmer. Like there's someone who is selling on his behalf. I won't get access to the farmer, so the price he gives me is a price I take. And for apparently even it gets to a point where farmers are not allowed to go over this middlemen or sort of people, because it may be your land, but it's still not your land, kind of. This is
thank you.
It's a sad state of affairs, because you can imagine I mean, even let's say our grandparents have, like, you had access to your mother's land. You also have worked with people who have access to their parents' land. So you may want to do it. The will may be there, but how the system has been set up, it works against you. do you think there's a way we can overcome this I don't want to say the system, because the system sounds like a very big monster in the room, but when you talk about how we can bypass this and just make the farmers go, because my mind is going to maybe like social media advertisement for my produce, but then again, like how effective is that for the farmer? So how do we overcome such issues when it comes to just removing that whole bureaucracy, so to speak?
Yeah, I think it's one of the barriers in agriculture, and I think it's exactly what you've said. If you do the math, you do all the farming, and when it comes to the time to reap from your hard labor, then there are so many people involved who have to get their cut.
And they were not involved in the process. They were not involved in the whole process.
Exactly. It's one of the barriers, and I think it's one monster that as the sector we've been dealing with for a very long time. To be honest with you, sometimes things are as they are by design, and there are usually some reasons why they are as such. And what we do as experts within the value chains is trying to see what's your role within this chain. How much value are you adding not only to the product but to the farmer? So then if the math is negative to anyone involved in this, then you see you're a barrier, you're not an enabler in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
So then what we do is we empower farmers. In this case, the young people we work with. Now, empowerment is often a very big word that we talk about, but are not keen to define what is this empowerment. To me, in the sector we work in, empowerment is basically nurturing the young person to a point where they're capable of negotiating, influencing, and controlling the activities within the value chain to a point that they have the say at the end of the day. Well, they have barriers. I may not have the right marketing skills to get my niche market. In that case, I have to leverage services of a middleman in this case.
Yeah.
But then with the right empowerment, the farmers have access to their ultimate buyer, who is the final consumer. So we still have the middleman problem, but then it's starting to dwindle in certain sections of the value chain, and farmers are starting to reap the benefits of this. So then the role of the middleman is moving up a bit up towards in the chain. They're becoming lobbyists and are starting to influence policy because the farmer knows how to get to the consumer. But then the middleman, that was their job initially, remember? So you don't pay Paul by robbing Peter, by getting the middleman out of the
equation.
They also get their job upstream.
Yeah.
The farmer gets more profit, the policy is getting a bit more straightened, and the sector is growing. So there's enough for everybody.
So it's sort of legitimizing the middleman position, essentially.
And they're not in the middle anymore.
They're not in the middle. They're going up towards the top of the food chain.
Exactly, because if there's no produce, there's not going to be a middleman. But then we can't have producers if there's no incentive to produce. If I produce and all the money goes to someone else, I don't have the incentive. So in aquaculture, what we say that the enterprise can only justify itself in economic terms. So people have to make money. If you don't make money,
you can't.
Don't dig the pond, grow maize or something else. That's what I advise people.
Okay.
So for it to make economic sense to the farmer, we have to relook at it. So we are seeing how do we shorten the value chain. If you shorten the value chain, it doesn't mean you're necessarily removing someone. You're just giving them a different role, and that's systems thinking and food systems in general, where we look at the actors and what their roles are and how do we get maximum value along the chain for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Esther? Do you share the same opinion?
I do actually, but I also have a slightly different take.
Yeah.
But from a family perspective, I don't know whether you experience the same, where women and youth do all the work, but then the men are the ones who reap.
Get the credits.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So that's something we have encountered. Like the women will farm and we'll also have the contracts with the women. But when it comes to payment, because most of them don't tend to have bank accounts,
Yeah.
the money is channeled to
To
the
the
head of
men's.
the family.
Yeah.
And I think one of the avenues that we used to discourage that was encourage the family as a setup to like have joint accounts, so the woman also have a sense of ownership, because you also have to be very strategic in how you approach such an issue. So
Yeah.
when we do
Like you said, it's
empowerment,
systemic thinking.
exactly. So when we empower, we don't like call women and then the men are at the corner or they're left at home and they feel left out. We also include them in the conversation so they know it's a collective effort. Like,
Is it-
when a woman gets money,
Yeah.
and it's proven,
Yeah.
the first thing she thinks about is the children, the welfare of the home. Sometimes, especially in the community I come from, there's a lot of other vices like alcoholism. So when a man gets money, the first thing he does is go
Drink
spend it. So when we invite them to have the conversation, they're like, yeah, it makes sense. We can always like, even if I'm going to take some, then we have like a budget. So we include financial literacy into the whole aspect. We just don't empower them in a singular way. It's a holistic approach. Yeah.
I like the way that now we've brought the aspect of financial literacy and the family point of view in food systems, because it's normally overlooked. And I have a question on this. Even in modern families, in urban setups, having a joint account is something that is not really, how will I put it? It's slowly being approached, or rather appreciated, by families. So now I'm trying to imagine, for people who are farmers and for families that all they have at their mind is, I'm a farmer, I grow, I produce, I sell. That's it. That's where it ends. When the money comes, normally there is, of course, the setup that mwanaume the head of the household, so I'll get the money. So do you face resistance when it comes to families opening these joint accounts and actually channeling the money there? Because it's one thing to open the joint account, but it's one thing to also change your mind completely and appreciate the fact that this money coming into a joint family setup is actually beneficial to the whole family.
Yeah. So it's definitely a very tricky subject, given that it's already a cultural norm.
Yeah.
And you cannot change the hierarchy of a culture. I mean, it's near impossible. But the thing we can do is
The literal definition of
sensitization.
culture is how people live.
Exactly. And they've lived like that for generations.
Yeah.
They know I get the money, I distribute. But when you highlight like the other needs and you bring in the picture of it's not just about you for now, you have a family and you have to think about that. And that is only from an inclusivity perspective. Like times are changing and the needs for a family are a lot more. Your kids needs to go to school. If you don't empower them, then you show the dangers of they'll have to rely on you. They can't leave home and go get better jobs because they're not going to school. So we show them the entire picture so they understand what is at stake. So that's one of the approaches we use. I don't know.
Is that the same for you, John? In the communities you work with?
Yeah, it is. Actually, most projects currently in aquaculture are women and youth focused. It's mostly from an inclusivity point of view.
Yeah.
But then it stretches out to economics, and just like she said, the woman earns the home benefits.
Yeah.
The man earns, we don't know what happens.
That's a very interesting way to put it.
We don't know what happens. Well, for me, I think it's more of a necessity. I won't really go through to the inclusivity angle. Looking at what proportion of our population are youth, for example. It means that if you want to make an impact in the society, you have to work with the youth. They're 60% in Africa. And I think it's the same proportion in Kenya.
Yeah. Or even higher.
Even higher. No, it's 75%.
It's 75,
for Kenya.
it's higher.
Yeah. And the women, it's almost the same thing. So it means that if you want to make an impact, you'd be a bit naive if you ignored the majority. The majority are the youth and the women. Yeah. And research has it that by unplugging this, you're accelerating development and growth across various value chains. So for me, it's something we have to do. it's the cake. So the icing is, if we do that, we include
got it,
everyone,
yeah.
and everyone is happy at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to add something. I read on our FAO research, and they said if more women were given access to financing, our agricultural sector will grow by 20%.
Wow. Okay, that's actually very interesting.
If
Yeah.
the agricultural sector grew,
Yes.
then our economy grows
And everyone
11
is
times more. So
And everyone is happy.
yeah, everybody's happy.
I want us to talk about the communities that you work with.
Yeah.
Just briefly, do you just work with communities in the lake region, or because that's where mostly fish farming happens? Because I've also seen a couple of fish farms sprouting up all over the country. I think I mentioned Sagana is one of them. We have others in areas that are not necessarily you would consider people who have grown up around fish farming, if I could speak, if I could say that. So what communities do you work with all over the country? Is it just, do you have a specification for this part of the region, or is it broad?
It's broad, short answer, and this is very strategic and out of need. Reason being, initially, as a country or as a region, we have a very good fish eating culture.
Yeah.
Since we have Nilots around the lake, and that being the
Actually,
main.
it's not just even Nilots. Like, everyone loves fish. Most people
so
do.
initially,
Yeah.
so
Okay. Initially, fair enough.
initially the fish eating culture was
Where it originated from.
River Lake Nilots.
Yeah.
And then I think it's the 1950s when the government says, okay, let's have Eat More Fish campaign.
Yeah.
And this was because we're starting to see this health benefit to eating fish. You have all these micronutrients that come from eating fish. And of course, the joke has always been people from the lake are
Sharp people.
sharp.
You didn't want to say it yourself. You're like,
Exactly. so it's something that it's not just for a specific tribe.
Yeah.
It's for your health benefit. This is something that you need to eat. But then if you look at it from economic terms, fish is a very cheap source of protein, to be honest. Yeah, if you look at a kilo of fish versus a kilo of beef or goat meat or mutton or pork, then you realize fish is a very cheap source of protein. With our growing population and, of course, the income levels, this is a very easy way to getting this essential nutrient to masses. You look at it from an environmental point of view, growing fish is very resource efficient. With the growing in population, again, we have limited land and water, which are very critical natural resources. A unit of fish is, if you compare resources you need to grow a kilo of fish compared to beef, for example, fish is very resource efficient. So then it's also smart if you look at it from a climate point of view. So we are strategic in that, yes, we know it would make our life way easy if we limited our activities around Lake Victoria, but then it won't be the right thing.
Yeah.
The reason being, if you want more fish out here, then we have to be adaptive. We have to be responsive. We have to make it such that around Mount Kenya you could grow fish. We know that the fish we eat around here, which is mostly tilapia and catfish, they're warm water fish. So then we have systems that could help people from other regions grow fish in such regions. We have school feeding programs where in central Kenya we are promoting omena in their diets. So that way it's not just a cultural thing, but then it's a nutritional thing which trumps cultural norms. Yeah, so it's many regions. To be more specific, we work in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and now Zambia. And it's all the whole aquaculture value chain. It's everybody, be it trade, be it production, be it input side of things. Yeah.
Right. That's actually an interesting point of view. I have just a question. How much is a kilo of fish? How much does it go for at the lake?
At the lake?
Yeah.
Around 300 bob.
300 bob. That's a kilo of fish.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about tilapia, how many fish is that, if I may call it like that, on average? Because I'm trying to do the math in my mind.
Yeah.
And the discrepancy is, if I buy fish right now in Nairobi, just outside our apartment, there's a guy who sells fish, and I think one goes for maybe like 300 bob.
Yeah.
And that's just one fish. And it's definitely not a kilo.
Yeah.
Is
But
it more or less?
Less,
it's
probably.
way less because like it's a fish that the size is something like this maybe, which is fair enough for like the city standard.
Yeah.
City standard, heavy on city standard. And it goes for 300 bob. But if I buy meat at the butchery, it goes for like 500 to 600.
Yeah.
So I can get 2 fish for the same amount of 1 kilo. So that means if I bought it from the lake, it would be way cheaper for me. And there's more than I could have gotten here.
Yeah, that's true. The guys, often at times, the guy selling you the fish in Nairobi is not the guy who produced it. So
Definitely.
in between,
Most probably not.
someone had to buy it from them
Yeah.
and transport it, and they have to make their margins. Of course, sometimes it's unfairly high. But then I often start this conversation from the production side, because we look out for the farmer first before anybody else. And we say, anytime you want to put fish in your production unit, you have to think of the market, because the market will tell you what size of fish you're going to sell, whether you're going to sell it per kilo or per piece, and who is going to buy it from you, and in what terms. And based on that final target weight, it determines how many fish you stock, because any production unit has a maximum carrying capacity, which you can't go by. So I'll just narrow it down to what normally happens to avoid being too technical. Most farmers grow fish to around 300 grams, 200, 300 grams, sometimes even smaller.
Okay.
Reason being, most families, kids would prefer one full small fish to half of a big fish.
Yeah. Like in the way, I'd rather have my own full fish.
Exactly. So economically, farmers tend to grow small-sized fish. It's easy to grow. At that phase, fish grow relatively faster, and your cost of production is relatively low. And that means you have a competitive advantage, because the market is not very flexible in terms of how much they'll give you per piece, per kilo. So it's true that it's cheaper in Kisumu, but then it depends on where in Kisumu.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So it may be
Some places it's very expensive in Kisumu, because then the wholesale buyers have taken everything, and it's all with you here in Nairobi, and what's left in Kisumu is not
Just
a lot, and so the price goes up.
because I've had fish by the lake, and there's a very big difference between having it by Lake Victoria and buying it because first of all, at the lake it's quite big. Like it's a fish that is really, really big, and it goes for a very affordable price. And once you go outside, it's like the further you are from the lake, the more expensive it gets.
And the smaller it gets.
And the smaller it gets, and the smaller it gets as well. And I love that you talked about market, because you talked about market as we were starting as well. So when we talk about the untapped market opportunities for young people, especially, I think by the virtue of this conversation, we've also realized aquaculture is probably one of them. But what are these other untapped markets for youth in farming? Because we realize mostly what we do is subsistence farming. It's just the normal maize, maybe the cereals. So what are the other untapped markets that we may not know too much about, or may have a problem penetrating into the Kenyan ecosystem or landscape?
I think, well, because we are talking about money.
Yes.
So I'm thinking of where we as youths can make more money. I think maybe the export market, there's still a huge opportunity there. And as you said, we have very small farms. So in terms of quality control, that might be hard. So I think one of the best things we can do if we're looking to tap into that market is banding together.
Okay.
Yes. Like as you're saying, like you have farmers, but like a group
Unity
of
is
farmers.
strength.
Yeah. Thank you very much for saying that. Yeah. So we can come together, find a contract, and then have a centralized place where we can control the quality and then exploit the export market. I think the other thing, maybe also cross-border trade. For instance, poultry farming. It's very, very expensive. That's something I try to get into, and
You?
I'm still I'm still recovering. So first, the inputs very expensive. Feed. If you buy it locally, most of it adulterated. High aflatoxin levels, which in turn poison your cuckoos. And then if you try to go to Tanzania, it's so much bureaucracy. It's obviously cheaper there, but if
By
you
the time
also
it gets to you here, you'd rather just get it from here.
No, still.
Just don't.
Yes, well, you can still do it if you have enough in production, because also the cost locally are a little bit more, to be honest. But if we can band together, you have your 5,000 chicken, he has his 10,000, and we buy together. Like,
so this is large scale.
Yeah,
this
large
is on a
scale.
large scale.
No, even when you're buying inputs, we buy, we bring them into the country. You take your section, I take mine.
Yeah,
That's what I mean. Like, we have to think of a way we can work together, because if we continue working as small scale farmers, we'll always be that. We'll always be very food insecure, because it's also not very investable when you're a small scale farmer. You're very high risk. So if we come together as youths, we have a common shared goal. If you're in the agricultural space, then there's a way of making money. So instead of focusing on maybe like a crop, we remove the subsistence mind of farming. Even if I'm farming that maize, but if we are like 10 farmers who are buying seeds, we can ask the seed producers to give us a bigger discount, which will mean in turn will mean exactly a bigger profit margin. So I think that's one of the things I would advocate for.
But Esther, how easy is it to get into the export markets?
Well,
or how hard is it?
It all depends, to be honest. If you have the right mindset and you're determined, there is a way. And there's a huge market. There are a lot of people who need stuff in the Middle East, in Spain, all over Europe. Yeah.
Okay. So
and there is, and when you look at the trend, I think there was an increase in like 11 or 12% of commodities being exported abroad.
Yeah, from Kenya.
Yeah, from Kenya. So, and it's growing each year. So clearly that's indicative of demand, yes. Yeah.
So this is sort of, because usually large-scale companies or the big farms are the ones who, because they have the resources and the capacity to export, they're the ones who have access to this. So what you're suggesting is you guys just come together, bring your resources, bring your product. Let's do this thing as a whole.
Yes.
Obviously, this will face some resistance because you'd be presenting sort of a competition to people who've been there already. But since you said the market is big, that's what I was getting.
And we should also be bold enough to be able, if we keep saying that there's too much competition, then we'll never take any risk. Yeah.
So the point is just come together and do this as a whole. Like we said, unity.
Because also when you also do it together, if there are losses, you can also share them instead of like working.
You've said that, and I remembered. This is not even just in farming. I was listening to a podcast. I can't quite remember which one, and they were saying, yes, it was. I think it was Dr. Kingori's podcast, and he said, shout out to Dr. Kingori. He said he was having a Somali on the podcast, and he said the way the Somalis do business, it's very easy for them to even encounter losses, because if I want to import something, if I'm probably like in the phone or devices import business, I'll import like a whole container, but I'll do it with like 10 of my friends. So when we encounter a loss, we are all sharing it together. So sharing a loss together sort of reduces the impact of that loss compared to when I'm encountering it alone, because that's now a big hit on my business, and I may go low for quite some time. All right.
And I think also to add one more thing, also in terms of access to credit, banks are more willing to also offer. Even the government, they finance mostly groups. So if you're together, it also facilitates your access to, makes it easier for you to access credit. So.
Okay. All right. We'll get to that point of finances and how easy it is for young people to get finances to do these activities. But just before we go on, I want us to touch on policy and institutional support, because we've just talked about government a few seconds ago. So when it comes to support that is offered by the policies and by the programs that are currently there, one example you could have said was when government came up with Eat Fish in 1950, but that was like
the colonial government.
That's actually literally the colonial government.
There's a recent one. 2019 was the economic stimulus program that saw construction of, I think, close to 60% of the current ponds that we have around the country. Yeah, it made fish farming quite popular.
And they were funded by government.
Exactly, yeah.
So when it comes to other programs, because you're an entrepreneur, so I'm sure you've encountered lots of policies and programs, whether they have been positive or negative. How are they? Are they structured towards mostly empowering young people to also get into the market and stay, not just like a one-off thing and then you're done? Or do we need to work more, especially when it comes to institutional support and not just government? Like even, because we've talked about banks and SACCOs and other financial organizations. Are they open to financing a young person who may not have guarantees? They may not have, I'm coming to ask for a loan to start my fish farm, but I don't have anything else to offer you. Like, just give me blind money. Because I mean, we're in the development space, and even organizations in the development space that give blind grants are few. Like, there's so few organizations, and those are like the endowed ones. I hope you can. Okay, I mean, they say it themselves. I think we can mention one of them is like the Ford Foundation. And Ford does it because they have like $1 billion in grant money. So they can do that. Even Global Fund for Children, they can give you money because they trust you. Yeah, they have it, so to speak. But not most of them want what you're going to do with it, how are you going to use it for this period of time. And then, so in terms of the policy and institutional support, is it really structured to support young people?
Do you want to go first or should I?
Clearly, this is a very...
I can take that. It's a very interesting field to work because there's the traditional lending or financial facilities for farmers, and then there's the current innovative and the alternative financing. And then there's the youth, which is a very new card in the game.
So like them supporting themselves.
Exactly. So the youth, as you said, they don't have collateral. They don't have credit history. And as we know, the traditional banks are very risk averse, and the youth are risky by definition.
By definition, exactly. They call it ujoto wa damu ya ujana.
So then currently, I think what's happening is we have the emerging financial options. The first one, we have the mobile lending services. I think an example of a very successful one is M-Kopa, where we are not just using the digital platform to disburse you the money, but we're using it to assess your credit worthiness as well. We can just look at your M-Pesa records. How have you been transacting? How well are you managing your finances? And based on your current balance and where it all came from, we can assess you. And M-Kopa is doing quite well, especially in the rural areas. And that alone is an encouragement that we can go that route. I earlier on talked about value chain financing, where as a youth, you don't have capital. Maybe you have the capital, but you need something to push you. That's catalytic. Having these options, because you mentioned the organizations that give grants. The grant is supposed to be catalytic, otherwise it's lost money. So in this case, we have you in a very controlled ecosystem where there is full accountability, because if you drop the ball, everyone within the ecosystem says, you got the money, you dropped the ball, what's up? So the young people involved in outgrower models, involved in any value chain financing schemes are doing quite well. The problem that's emerging is that we're seeing a mismatch between youth aspiration and how we fund. Remember, you said someone will ask you, what do you want to do with the money and things like that. There's what the youth want to do, and there's what their perception is of what their role in the agriculture value chain is. And then there's what we are financing. So I think the moment there'll be a match, that is, we are funding what the youth care about and what they want to do. Because participation in agriculture is not just people signing forms and getting money.
Yep,
There has to be voluntary contribution and involvement where they feel they have the agency and the business belong to them.
They have to feel involved.
Exactly. So without that, we'll be throwing away the money. So we have to ensure that we are funding things that the youth care about and we meet them where they are, rather than go to villages and say, guys, I have a solution. And this solution is what I'm funding. Anything else, I'm not funding this. So there has to be room for innovation and we have to listen to the youth.
How about you, Esther?
I'll have a slightly different take. But yeah, anyway. I like to reference to the Bible. God asked Moses, what do you have in your hand? So as youth, we also have to ask ourselves, what do we have in our hand? Yeah. And when I think about that story, I reflect on another story I saw in the media like 4 or 5 years ago. A young woman was being interviewed in her go down in Thika. Huge. She had 40 employees. And she was asked, how did you start your business? And she said she was packing bread in a factory. And next to that factory, there was a animal feed company. So after work, she had just been paid that Friday. So she had 2,500. She went to the factory next door and she asked, what can I supply you with? Have you seen that story? No. Her name is Josephine Joroge. Okay. And then she went and they told her, you can bring us maize. So it was at the weekend, so she wasn't working. She went to the village, Moranga, started buying mikebes of maize. Yeah. And she had a gunia. And just on Monday, yes, she took it to the factory. She made double
what she was making at the warehouse.
Yes. Okay. That day she made 5,500. She went back. In 6 years, ABSA had approached her for a loan to buy her lorries to expand her business. And the reason I say you have to use what you have in your hand is that, like, because sometimes as a youth, when you think about financing and you think about money and you sit down and you have these ambitious plans and it's thousands of dollars which you don't have access to and you don't have anywhere to get it, you don't have somebody who can finance you, our government frankly doesn't. Yes. So you have to really be intentional about what you want and be willing to start small, because most of us don't want to start small.
Yeah, that's
to some
true.
extent,
that's
I also
true.
did not want to start small. I mean, especially when you're educated and you're going back to the village.
Like,
and
this looks like it's below me.
You're beginning with your father to give you an acre to farm. You're like, you don't want to do it. But we have to be willing to also do that because you have a long-term vision and you're persistent with the vision that you have. The money sometimes will end up coming to you. Okay, most of the times when you stick to your dreams. And that is just one woman. I've worked, I love going to those ecosystems where women and youth tell their stories. Another example is a Sheba farm. She does exports. Yeah. And a bank approached her, that is Cooperative Bank, to give her money. So when you're consistent in whatever you're doing, the money
eventually comes.
People notice. Yeah, and money will come to you.
I think it's... it's okay.
And to that point, it's about skin in the game. And that's how we love to approach it. In as much as we have these interventions aimed at financing the youth, but we also assess how much skin do you have in the game, because that's how we assess what you care about. Yeah. So yes, what does Moses have in his hand? we look at that, but also don't forget that Moses was once a helpless kid floating in a river.
He was.
And in that place, someone had to come and pick him up. So we have youth in different situations. Yeah. We have really vulnerable ones, and those are the Moses floating in the river. But then we also have the Moses with a club in the hand, and we have to ask him, what do you have?
What do you have?
And so both cases.
But also for the Moses is in the river. Most of them also don't have the information to know they can apply for a grant. If you're in the village, how do you know you should?
True. How do you have access to this
how do you even know Mcopa is offering loans? How do we get to such vulnerable youths as well?
Yeah, so in that case, it's about awareness creation. I was seeing something the other day about how our curricula in Kenya, for example, is structured. And in a way, in as much as we say agriculture is the backbone, in some ways we send the youth away from agriculture. And what we put in our ears is not necessarily very relevant. In high school, for example, in my school, whether you wanted to do business, agriculture, or computer, it was not up to you. You got to school, you're told you're in Form 1
Yeah.
yellow. Form 1 yellow only does agriculture.
So you have to do agriculture.
You have to do agriculture, or you're in blue, and blue only does business, and that's it. And then it sets your pace. When you're applying for your courses in the university, they tell you must have done this and this, so you can't do this.
So you're already boxed.
You're
Yeah.
boxed.
From
So I love her question. That is, how do we reach out? How do we ensure that the vulnerable people are reached and everyone is strategically targeted with the right information? It's an effort we put in our programs. And you have to be flexible. You have to be responsive. You cannot say, I'm only going to use Facebook. Yes, many farmers are on Facebook, but what if you want to reach the urban ones who migrated from Facebook like a decade ago?
True.
Then you come to TikTok, you're on Instagram.
Yeah.
So we have to be, some of them are not even on Facebook.
Which
Go to
is-
the village
which is
elder
true.
and
Yeah.
talk to them.
Most of them are not. It's social media may be a very big tool to market, but sometimes it's also, you find, interestingly enough, actually, most of the people who are, like you said, in the rural areas mostly, don't have, they rely on person to person business, like interpersonal relationships.
Yeah.
So they have a guy in Nairobi, they have a guy in Naivasha, they have a guy in here and here. So they're just like, can you give me like 10 sacks of potatoes next week? And they're like, yeah, sure, send lorries. And then the lorries come and they supply. They don't need social media. So for them, it's, they're content with what they have. But now it's about piercing the market as well as young people, like you're saying. When you said coming together, looking at what you have in your hand, I think let's be more sensitive. Let's be more sensitive. Finally, I want to throw this question off you. When to the both of you, if you were to give your predictions or hopes for the young people in the food systems landscape, what would be your prediction and your hope?
My prediction.
Yes.
That's a good
Of youth-led agri business.
Yeah, I think we are the most innovative generation at the moment.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of hope, and we are also moving towards more climate focused agriculture. But we should also never forget the people who are there when we're developing solutions.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I would want to tell us as youths. When you have a brilliant idea, make sure that you marry it with the needs of the people you're creating the solution for. Because there's a lot of opportunity in that space, a lot, and we actually need the technology. I like to think of places like India. They only started to grow more economically after they became food secure.
Yeah.
And if we, within this generation, we don't make Kenya food secure, then it will mean we can never have any other form of progress.
Yeah.
Because an empty stomach cannot focus on anything else.
True.
So I think our solutions should be farmer-centric, and we should be bold. Don't let anybody tell you that your idea doesn't hold water. Test it. Let you yourself prove yourself.
See if it can actually
of course,
hold the
don't
water.
also take advice. Get as many mentors as possible.
Yeah.
People who've been there, done it. Yeah, and we should be persistent.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about you, John? What's your prediction and hope for youth-led agribusinesses in Kenya and the continent?
Well, I love numbers, so they sometimes don't lie. We are 75% of the country, and I'm glad I'm still at a phase where I say we, because I'm in the group.
Constitutionally.
Exactly. So 30% of our GDP comes from agriculture.
Yeah.
70% of the employed Kenyans are primarily employed in agriculture, but 90% of us get our livelihoods from agriculture. So if you compare a situation where 90% get livelihood from agriculture, yet agriculture only contributes 30% of the GDP, the number 30%, if you don't put it in that context, looks big. But then there's huge potential.
Yeah.
Over 80% of Kenyans employed, that is 14 million out of the 17 million, are in the informal sector. 63% of this are youth.
Yeah. That's 63% of 14 million.
Exactly.
Are young people.
And remember the role of agriculture in employment and the livelihoods?
Yeah.
That tells you the landscape we have to play with. There is almost a blank canvas for young people to work with. And Production is still key. We need to produce food, to be honest. It was a shame that around 20% of Africans were facing hunger.
Yeah, unfortunately.
It is because 60% of uncultivated arable land is in Africa, but we don't have
get
food.
to, yeah.
That's a shame. So I think there's a lot more we can do, not only in production, but agro-processing. There's huge opportunity there. I think last year, less than 30% of everything Africa exported in agriculture was processed.
Yeah.
Less than 30%. So it means
That's a very meager number.
very small.
Yeah.
So the rest is wasted value. I would call it that for lack of a better term. And what we are exporting is mostly cash crops. So we are net importers of food, to be honest.
Yeah.
So that means we need to turn the tables. We need to work hard. And us being the majority in this country, nobody will do it. It's us who have to do it.
It's just us.
And there's a fallacy that an average farmer's age is 60 years in Kenya. That's not true, because only 2% or 2.5% of Kenyans are above 65.
Yeah.
So
really it goes to show you if the whole population,
Exactly.
just 2.5% are over 60.
So
That means most
so
of the farmers
who's the
are also
farmer?
below.
Yeah, so farmers are us. We are the farmers. So let no one tell you that it's the old people producing food. It's us. So it's upon us to take it up. The opportunities are immense as long as we put in the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We have unfortunately come to the end of this conversation, but it's definitely not the end of it, because this is something that we have to have. It's a recurring topic. We have to talk about it because the young people in Kenya are growing. The population is growing. If it's 75%, I mean, that was by 2019 census. So we can tell by the next time we're doing a census, young people will obviously be the larger chunk of the population. We are already. So when it comes to, I want to give you guys a chance to give your parting shot. As you're giving your parting shot, I also want you to tell people how they can have access to what you do, and more information about what you do. And you will have, so this is now your time to shine. That's what I tell my guests. This is your time to shine. Yeah. So you can use that camera and you can just tell them what you do, your parting shot first of all, and then what you do and how they can get in touch with you if they wanted to get in touch.
So my parting shot would be, as John said, we are the biggest working population in the agribusiness space. So we need to bring our A game as youths, and we need to have a vision of what we need our country to look like in terms of food security. And it's doable, because at the end of the day, we have to have a mindset shift to know that anything we decide is possible. And I feel like a lot of us, especially in this current climate, we feel overwhelmed, and we should never lose hope. So, yeah. Anyway, if anyone wants to get in touch with me, I am on LinkedIn, Esther Nyakuri, and our page is Blue Farms, Better Land Use for the Ecosystem. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Esther. Towards the end, you got a little bit emotional because of where we are as a country, and fair enough. How about you, John? So how can people get in touch with you, and of course your parting shots?
Well, for me, I think it's just to encourage the youth to be engaged in agriculture. Agriculture is a sector with a very huge potential in accelerating the growth we want. There's a huge document. I don't know why it's hidden. Most people don't read it. It's Agenda 2063 by the African Union.
Yeah,
it's dubbed the Africa we want. And I think one of the key goals there is how do we accelerate the growth of agriculture over the years, and the focus is on the youth and the role of women in this. So I think from every angle you look at it, the youth has to be at the center. Since we are talking about finance, we cannot overstate the fact that the youth are underserved and underfunded, of course, and there's a mismatch between what the youth want and sometimes what we offer, so we still have work to do. But then, like I said, it's a blank canvas and everyone has a role to play, and so we plate. Yeah, I'm lucky because I do something I care about. I work in the aquaculture space. I love fish. Uh, we have an aquaculture academy at Lattice
Okay.
where we train young people on practical aquaculture skills. So often we bridge the gap. So you've just gone to school, you have the knowledge, but then often at times there's what the sector needs.
Yeah.
So we try to bridge
And
that.
those two are usually two different
by
things.
giving the practical skills. We also train potential investors if you want to get into the sector. How do you get enough knowledge to make informed decisions so that you don't burn your fingers, go running and saying this thing is not profitable?
Yeah.
So we focus on technical and commercial. We have to make it a business, otherwise we have no reason doing it at all. Yeah, so go to latticeaquaculture.com to the website. I'm John Eric. I think you can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, guys, for coming on board. Today, I'm also going to have my own parting shots inspired by our guests. I think for me, the most important thing I've learned today is be an informed young person, and not just an informed young person. Be an informed farmer if you're in the food system space. There's so much information that is out there that we don't have access to. So if you want to get into this space, just be informed. And then the second one is use what you have. Use what you have to get what you don't. Be a Moses. Use what you have in your hand to get what you don't. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Voices of Food Future. My name is Caleb Nyaga. You can interact with our content on Vice Versa Global. Our website is viceversaglobal.com. You can find us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube, Vice Versa Global Official. And see you next time. Of course, this is the kind of content you always have. So the next topic we're going to have, which is the last part of this series, is going to be how is the future of food going to look like? So you definitely want to tune into that conversation as we look at how the food systems ecosystem is going to be like for Africa by 2050. Thank you so much.